Good morning. I hope you slept well in your cell. I do apologize for your poor accommodations. I fully admit you deserve better after felling that werewolf, but it was a necessary precaution. Although it is a rare occurrence, infection is a possibility, and we can't have you becoming a rampaging monster after all. You look confused, which can only mean the lieutenant did not fulfill his assignment and give you a full briefing. Trust me when I say he will be digging latrines for the foreseeable future for this dereliction of duty. That said, I guess it falls upon me to inform you of the supernatural world you are now a part of. As you are well aware, much of Europe is currently occupied dealing with the so-called revolutionary armies of Napoleon Bonaparte. His play for power mass is an almost holy quest to bring his country's revolution to other nations. A campaign I will admit is going better than most expected. Nonetheless, despite Napoleon being a rather skilled general, the combined forces of the wiser European powers will take him and his allies to task eventually. Sadly, Napoleon is not the only threat to world stability. Early on in the conflict, soldiers and officers alike claimed after particularly bloody confrontations that they heard the echoes of the very battles they had just engaged in occurring high above them in the sky. At first, these echoes were considered the hallucinations of wary fighters, but as more reports came in, many decided to investigate further. These investigators consulted with occultists, seers, and religious mystics of both respectable reputation and of ill repute, and they all came to the same horrifying conclusion. These echoes were no hallucination or naturally occurring phenomenon. They derive from entities that we have come to call harvest men, spirits, demons, or something else entirely, that feed off the pain, fear, and rage of mortals. As far as we can tell from our research, these beings have always existed, feeding off the various wars and conflicts that humanity have often engaged in throughout history. Thankfully, their otherworldly abilities during those times were limited enough that whatever supernatural powers they displayed were minimal, and quickly became the thing of myth, legends, and old wives' tales. But this particular conflict of nations is an entirely different matter. The amount of death and bloodshed occurring within it was a bounty of suffering they had never tasted before, giving them a substantial boost to their abilities. Abilities that they have used to birth horrors inspired by Europe's myths and legends. The werewolf you fought previously being a prime example, along with entities such as undead and even demons. Although whether these demons are manifestations of the harvestman's power, or actually from hell, is still highly debated. Debated because we know that the harvestman can also tear holes into other realms, most notably the realm of the Fae, allowing for creatures such as goblins, pixies, and trolls to cross into our world. Besides being horrible monsters, their otherworldliness plays hell with any form of technology. A pixie tends to be just an annoying pest, but it can still be quite deadly if it causes your musket to blow up in your face. And there is sadly a more mundane threat that can be just as lethal: your fellow man. Whether they be innocent folk entranced by some supernatural creature, or mad cultists who willingly serve the harvest men, they must be considered as much of a threat as any monstrous entity. Now, most commoners dismiss the existence of these harvestmen and their creations, and honestly that's the way we prefer it. The less people who know of them, the less fear the harvestmen can feed on. But of course, the harvestmen's creations cannot be ignored, otherwise whatever havoc they unleash will cause the very panic we hope to avoid. Thus, each nation has created organizations to fight these monsters. Composed of soldiers like you have faced these horrors and lived to tell the tale. These organizations come in many forms and have many names. Ours, for example, is called the Silver Bayonets, and it is, in my opinion, the most skilled and accomplished of them all, and I am not just saying that because we are British. Alright, it's mainly because we are British. Excuse me for having a little national pride. Now, although these organizations have a common enemy, that does not mean they work together under a banner of cooperation. Their sponsor nations are still at war after all. And even supposed allies will betray each other if some particular bit of lore or an ancient artifact gives their nation any form of advantage. Thus, every mission by these organizations are always covert in nature. A particular unit deployed behind enemy lines not only to prevent the common folk from knowing too much, but to also prevent other nations from interfering. The head of any of these units will be an officer. Those who have a good head for command and the will to see their mission through, even if it's into the jaws of death itself. Although I mostly doubt it will come to that. The right hand of these officers will often be junior officers, whose ability to effectively relay the officer's commands, or take over in case the officer is injured or deceased, is vital. They may also be veteran hunters, those who often have far more experience fighting the supernatural than anyone else, but don't have the skill or will for leadership. And at the officer's command of the various types of soldiers they can recruit from the armed forces when necessary. There are the common soldiers you would find in any fighting force, infantrymen with their standard issue muskets, grizzled grenadiers who take the fight directly to the enemy, riflemen with their slower firing but highly accurate rifles, light and heavy cavalry to run down particularly quick supernatural entities, artillerists and sappers to destroy buildings, bridges, and fortifications, as well as doctors to ensure all of them stay in mostly one piece. Beyond these common soldiers, some nations are known to have fighters with more specialized skills. For example, some maintain a tradition of swordsmanship, such as Prussia and Spain. You would think it a poor decision in this age of ranged warfare, but considering some supernatural enemies such as the Revenants are practically immune to shot, they are a valuable asset. It is why I insist to have at least one Highlander in my unit whenever I'm on a mission. Having an angry Scotsman with a claymore at your side is one hell of a confidence booster. Nations with significant naval power may employ marines and sailors, especially when the horror they face are found on the coast or in nearby waters. More traditionally militant nations such as Austria place high value on military strategy, and are far more willing to risk their tacticians, especially those trained in small unit tactics. Nations with far-flung colonies make good use of native scouts, a bit of an expense to send them across the seas, but their skills in tracking are invaluable. And you will occasionally see some nations making use of company irregulars and militia to fill out a particular niche when needed. Of course, you can't go fighting supernatural creatures without some knowledge of their capabilities, which is where the supernatural investigator comes in. Whether from a secret society, on loan from the Vatican, or even self-taught, these individuals' insights are indispensable, ensuring the soldiers know exactly what fresh hell they may be getting into. Although knowledge of the supernatural is helpful, making use of supernatural powers can also be quite advantageous, which is why you'll often see occultists aiding a unit by casting spells, curses, or enchantments. Some nations, however, view the use of occultists as rather, heretical, which is why they instead employ champions of the faith, individuals imbued with such religious zeal that the very faith becomes a weapon, a powerful ability, if you can withstand the constant preaching. Austria is known to employ dampiers, men and women whose mothers were bitten by a vampire during pregnancy, transforming the child into a half-human, half-vampire being. The nation raises them as wards of the state, and train them to fight the horrors that birthed them. In Russia, specifically Siberia, there are ancient tribes that have ties to the natural spirit of the bear. So in tune are they with these spirits, that many of them have the ability to transform into bears to varying degrees. And I guess I should mention the vivandières. They are women who sell supplies to and aid the armies of France as nurses and carers during their revolutionary campaigns. But a few, after living through a supernatural event, feel compelled to fight the creatures of the harvestmen head-on, choosing to strike down the horrors that had previously tried to lay them low. Besides having soldiers as well as supernatural powers to call upon, you will also have access to quite the arsenal. Silver for vampires and werewolves, cold iron for those annoying fae, salt for ghosts and demons, as well as ways to rapidly ignite a flame for creatures that are especially flammable. All of this and more are things you will need to take into consideration when you take command. Don't look so surprised, soldier. Anyone who can kill a werewolf with a silver butter knife is, in my opinion, officer material. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to fill out a report on yesterday's incident and punish a lazy subordinate. For now, take the day and enjoy a stroll around the village, because tonight, soldier, you will dive headfirst into a dangerous and dark world.
Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed this video on Silver Bayonet, the horror-themed wargame set during the Napoleonic era. If you like it, link to where you can buy the game is up there somewhere in the show notes. If you like it, please like, subscribe, comment, press the little bell so that YouTube guys know I exist, and hopefully more people see my comment. And if you really like it and you're inclined, and if you have the extra cash, please send a little money. I can say words. Send a little money my way to my Patreon or my Coffee account. The extra money gives me the time I need to work on these stories I love. Anyway, thanks for listening / watching, and see you next time.